All right, welcome to another deep dive. And today we're going to tackle a question that I think is on a lot of people's minds. What role could advanced nuclear technologies play in New York's energy future?
It's a big one.
Yeah, it is a big one. We've
Yeah.
got like a stack of reports here, studies, even some public comments about this blueprint for nuclear that the state is developing. And I think it'd be really interesting to kind of go through some of this stuff
Yeah.
and figure out like what are the key points, what are people saying, what are the different perspectives.
I think the challenge that New York is facing is balancing these ambitious climate goals with a rapidly growing demand for electricity.
Right, exactly. And I love how some of these sources, like, they get into these really interesting questions, like,
Yeah.
could New York, like, pull a France and shift to a mostly nuclear grid, like, in a short amount of time?
Yeah.
Are these new reactor designs really safer? Could nuclear power actually be a better environmental choice than renewables? Like,
Mhm.
those are some big questions.
Those are some of the big ones.
Yeah.
And it all stems from one core challenge, and that's that New York State has a legal mandate to achieve a zero-emission electricity grid by 2040.
Whoa, that's
That's thanks to the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, or the Climate Act for short.
Okay, okay. So big goals, but how do we actually get there? Especially when, a
Yeah.
lot of New York still relies so heavily on fossil fuels, especially, downstate.
Yeah, I mean that's really the crux of it, and it's not going to get any easier, right?
Yeah.
Because the demand for electricity in New York is only projected to increase
Right.
as we electrify things like cars and heating,
Right.
all those
Yeah.
things.
And then you've got all these like energy intensive industries, data centers popping up everywhere. And now we've got that massive Micron semiconductor plant coming to New York. I mean, that's going to need a ton of power.
Yeah, you're highlighting a critical point, right? This all points to this growing firm clean energy gap, right? We need reliable carbon-free power sources that can run around the clock, unlike solar and wind, which are, intermittent.
So what you're saying is even if we cover the state in solar panels and wind turbines, we still need something to keep the lights on when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing.
That's exactly the problem.
Right.
And this isn't just, a theoretical concern.
Right.
This is something that places like California and Germany, which have invested heavily in renewables,
You're right.
are running into real-world challenges with.
I think I've heard about that. Didn't California have like rolling blackouts because they didn't have enough reliable power?
They did. And in Germany,
Mm-hmm.
energy prices have skyrocketed,
Yeah.
partly due to their reliance on intermittent renewables.
So what you're saying is even though renewables are important, like going too far too fast can actually like backfire and make things more expensive and less reliable?
Yeah, that's a key insight, and that's where these advanced nuclear technologies come into play.
Okay.
Because these aren't these aren't the nuclear reactors of the past.
Right.
These are a whole new generation of designs with different safety features, capabilities.
And this is where like it gets exciting for me.
Right.
Can you give us like a breakdown of some of these different reactor types?
Yeah, absolutely. So we could start with light water reactors,
Okay.
and these are kind of like the next evolution of existing technology, but with key improvements like enhanced safety features and the potential for smaller, more modular design.
Like building blocks almost?
Imagine
Yeah.
imagine assembling a reactor like building blocks.
Yeah, right.
These could be manufactured off-site and transported to where they're needed.
That's fascinating. Modular reactors. That's really cool. And I've also heard about these other designs that like use completely different approaches,
Right.
like not even water-based.
Yeah, so you're likely thinking about non-light water reactors.
Okay.
One example is the molten salt reactor, which offers super high efficiency, potential for fuel recycling, and just inherent safety features that are built into the design itself.
Wow.
And then there are high temperature gas reactors, which can operate at incredibly high temperatures, making them suitable not just for generating electricity, but also for industrial processes that require, a lot of heat.
So not even just powering our homes, but also like cleaning up industries like steel making or producing hydrogen fuel.
Exactly.
This is a much bigger shift than I initially realized.
Yeah.
But let's be real for a second.
Okay.
Whenever most people hear nuclear, they think of, you know, meltdowns and radiation.
Yeah.
How safe are these new reactors, really.
So it's understandable that people have those concerns,
Yeah.
but it's important to remember that advanced reactors are designed with safety as a top priority.
Okay.
And they incorporate what are called passive safety features,
Okay.
which rely on natural forces like gravity and convection to shut down safely in case of emergencies.
Oh, wow.
So think of it like a ball rolling downhill.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't require any external power or human intervention.
So even if something goes wrong, they're designed to like essentially shut themselves down without any human input.
Exactly.
That's pretty reassuring.
It is.
But you also mentioned something about a special type of fuel.
Right.
How does that factor into safety?
So you're right. Some designs, like high temperature gas reactors, use what are called TRISO fuel particles.
Okay.
And think of these like tiny, super strong capsules that contain the nuclear material. And these capsules can withstand extreme temperatures without breaking down.
Wow. Right.
Which adds another layer of safety.
Okay, that sounds incredibly robust.
Yeah.
But I mean, no technology is completely risk-free, right?
You're absolutely right. It's important to acknowledge that any complex system, has potential risks.
Right.
However, it's worth pointing out that nuclear power, even with traditional reactors, has a remarkably low historical accident rate. And these advanced designs are building on that strong foundation with multiple layers of safety features.
Okay, that's good to hear. But what about location? I mean, nuclear power plants have this history of being built like far away from communities,
Right.
and for good reason.
Yeah.
How does siting play into all of this?
Yeah, so siting is a crucial consideration,
Yeah.
and it's something that's evolving.
Yeah.
Traditionally, there's been this 20-mile exclusion zone around nuclear plants.
Yeah, I remember learning about that in school. Like that's not really the kind of place you want to live near.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But things are changing.
Okay.
The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC, is exploring more flexible, what they call risk-informed siting guidelines
Yeah.
for advanced reactors.
So potentially like smaller exclusion zones or maybe even different criteria for choosing a location.
Exactly. And there's a really interesting possibility here. And that's repurposing existing fossil fuel plant sites
Oh, wow.
for new nuclear facilities.
That seems like a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Because we already have the infrastructure in place and it minimizes disruption to communities.
Right. It leverages existing grid connections.
Right.
And it reduces the need to build new transmission lines.
And I'm guessing those fossil fuel plant sites aren't exactly in like pristine natural areas anyway. So in some ways this could be like better for the environment.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah, citing advanced reactors at already developed locations could actually help protect wildlife habitats compared to building, large scale solar or wind farms that require, vast amounts of land.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential environmental benefits, the safety improvements, but what about the economic impact? This is New York we're talking about after all.
Yeah, you bring up an important point, and one of the often overlooked benefits of nuclear power is its ability to create high-paying long-term jobs.
Right.
And these aren't just temporary construction jobs either. We're talking about careers in operation, maintenance, engineering, manufacturing. The list goes on.
And I saw that highlighted in a lot of the public comments, like this idea that nuclear could support a more equitable energy transition by creating these good paying jobs.
Exactly.
And I know that these are often like union jobs with good benefits, which can really make a difference for families and communities. But let's be honest, nuclear power has this reputation for being expensive.
Right.
How do these advanced reactors like stack up cost-wise compared to other sources of energy?
Yeah, so you're right. Upfront capital costs for nuclear can be high.
Right.
But here's the key. Operating costs are relatively low.
Okay.
And there's a game changer here, and that's the Federal Inflation Reduction Act,
Right.
which offers substantial tax credits and loan guarantees specifically designed to incentivize nuclear development.
Oh, wow.
Which can significantly offset those initial costs.
So the government is really putting its money where its mouth is when it comes to supporting nuclear. That's great to hear.
They are.
But even with those incentives, like building these reactors still sounds pretty expensive.
It is a significant
Big.
investment,
Yeah.
but there's something else to consider here, and that's cost reductions through what we call serial production. And the idea is that as we build more reactors of the same design, the cost per reactor goes down.
So kind of like buying in bulk, you get a discount.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Are there any real world examples of that?
Yeah, absolutely. The Baraka nuclear plant in the UAE is a great example.
Okay.
They built 4 reactors of the same design,
Okay.
and the cost of each subsequent reactor was significantly lower than the first one.
Oh, wow. So as the industry scales up, we can expect those costs to come
Oh,
down.
good, quick.
Okay, but what about the supply chain? I mean, can we even get all the materials and components we need to build these reactors? Are we ready for that?
Yeah, that's a valid concern,
Yeah.
and it's something that comes up in several of the reports.
Yeah.
There are definitely concerns about the current strength of the domestic nuclear supply chain,
Right.
but as we see more commitments to nuclear energy, it creates what we call demand signals
Hmm.
that can stimulate investment and growth in that supply chain.
So it's kind of like a chicken and egg situation.
Yeah.
We need the demand to create the supply, but we also need the supply to meet the demand.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Right.
And it's worth noting that nuclear relies heavily on domestic resources and manufacturing,
Right.
unlike solar and wind, which often depend on overseas supply chains.
That's a really important point, especially when we think about energy independence and supporting American jobs.
Exactly. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
We've talked about the challenges New York is facing, the potential of advanced nuclear, safety considerations, economic impacts, and we haven't even talked about fusion yet.
Fusion, like everyone always asks about fusion.
Right.
Is it the magical clean energy solution everyone hopes for, or is it still just a pipe dream? I'm genuinely curious to hear your take on that.
Yeah, so fusion is definitely a hot topic, and it's important to be realistic about where things stand.
Okay.
While there have been like some incredible scientific breakthroughs,
Yeah.
fusion is still very much in the experimental phase.
Okay, so we're not going to see fusion power plants popping up in New York anytime soon.
Not quite.
Okay.
The major hurdle with fusion is achieving what we call sustained net energy producing reactions.
Right.
So in other words, we need to create a fusion reaction that produces more energy than it consumes
Right.
and can keep going for an extended period.
Okay.
We've made progress, but we're not there yet.
So it's kind of like having a car that guzzles more gas than it can drive. Not
Oh,
exactly practical.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if we can demonstrate that fusion is technically feasible, we still don't know if it would be like economically viable. Oh, wow. So even if we figure out how to make it work, we don't even know if it would be like affordable.
Yeah, there are a lot of unknowns with fusion.
Right.
A lot of unknowns.
Okay. So it sounds like fusion is more of a long-term bet,
Yeah.
maybe someday, but not anytime soon.
Right.
Which brings us back to advanced nuclear. If fusion is kind of off the table for the near future, and we're facing this pressing need for clean energy now, it seems like advanced nuclear is a serious contender to bridge that gap.
Absolutely. But before we move on, there's another big question that we need to address, the one that often comes up when people talk about nuclear power, and that's waste.
The elephant in the room,
Yeah.
like nuclear waste is a major concern for a lot of people, and it's not something you want to just sweep under the rug. How do these advanced reactors handle that issue?
Yeah, it's a valid concern, and I think it's important to start with the facts.
Okay.
The volume of waste generated by nuclear power is actually incredibly small compared to other industries, especially when you consider how much energy it produces.
Really? I always thought nuclear waste was like a huge problem.
Well, it's certainly something that needs to be managed carefully.
Yeah.
But the actual volume is surprisingly small.
Okay.
Think about all the waste generated by coal plants or other, fossil fuel operations. Nuclear waste is a tiny fraction of that.
That puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
So if the volume is manageable, like what do we do with it?
Right. So right now, nuclear fuel is stored in incredibly robust containers called dry casks.
Okay.
And these casks are designed to withstand, all sorts of extreme conditions and have a proven track record of safety and security.
Okay, so the waste is contained and managed safely, but can we do even better?
That's where advanced reactors offer even more potential.
Okay.
Some designs can actually recycle spent fuel from traditional reactors.
Wait, recycle nuclear waste? How does that work?
It's a complex process, but essentially they can reprocess the spent fuel and extract usable materials that can be used to create new fuel. And this not only reduces the volume of waste, but it also helps address concerns about the long-term storage of radioactive materials.
So less waste, and that we're getting more energy out of the fuel we've already used?
It's a very promising solution,
Yeah.
and the Department of Energy is actively supporting research into advanced recycling and waste management technologies.
That's great to hear. So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
We've talked about the energy challenges New York is facing, the potential benefits of advanced nuclear technologies, and some of the key considerations like safety, economics, and waste management.
Yeah, it's a complex topic, but hopefully we've provided a solid foundation for our listeners to understand the key issues at play.
Right, and stay tuned for part two, where we'll take a closer look at New York's blueprint for nuclear and explore some of the public comments and perspectives on this crucial issue.
It'll be really interesting to dive into those public comments.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. All right, until next time, everyone.
Next time.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into advanced nuclear energy in New York.
We've laid out the energy challenges, the potential of nuclear, but now let's kind of zoom in on that blueprint for nuclear that New York is developing.
Right.
What exactly at it, and what are people saying about it?
Well, it sounds like a pretty important document. I'm curious to kind of understand how it fits into the bigger picture.
So from what I've gathered from these documents, the blueprint is kind of like a scoping document, right? It's laying out the key considerations for potentially adding advanced nuclear technologies into New York's energy mix.
Okay.
It's not a final decision. It's more like a starting point for discussion and planning.
So kind of like a menu of options
Yeah.
for how New York could approach nuclear energy.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And what's really fascinating is the diversity of voices in the public comments on the blueprint.
Oh, interesting.
We've got, industry groups, we've got environmental organizations, local residents, even moms advocating for nuclear energy.
ROMs for nuclear.
Yeah, I mean it's a really broad range of perspectives, which is great to see.
I love that about these deep dives, is we get to hear from everyone, not just the usual suspects.
Exactly.
So what are some of the key themes that are emerging from these comments? Like what's on people's minds?
Well, the one that comes up again and again is the urgency of the climate crisis.
Right.
Many people are emphasizing that we don't have time to wait for futuristic solutions that are, still decades away.
Right.
We need to deploy technologies that can reduce emissions now.
Right.
And they see advanced nuclear as a key part of that strategy.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we talked earlier about that firm clean energy gap and how renewables alone can't provide the reliable power we need.
Exactly.
So it seems like a lot of people recognize that nuclear could help fill that gap.
And a point that several groups are making is that we already have a real world example of a rapid nuclear build out, and that's France.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They managed to transition from a mostly fossil fuel based grid to a predominantly nuclear one in just 15 years.
15 years. That seems incredibly fast for such a massive infrastructure project. Like, were there any major challenges or setbacks along the way?
It was a significant undertaking.
Right.
But France was able to achieve it without any major safety incidents and while keeping electricity prices relatively affordable.
That's really impressive.
Yeah.
But I'm also seeing some pushback in these comments, particularly from folks who are concerned about nuclear waste.
Yeah.
What are they saying, and how are proponents of nuclear responding to those concerns?
Yeah, so the waste issue is definitely a hot topic, as you as you might expect.
Yeah.
Opponents of nuclear power are raising concerns about long-term storage and the potential risks associated with transporting and managing radioactive waste.
Right.
Um, and it's important to acknowledge those concerns.
Yeah,
Those are real concerns.
Yeah.
Um, how are people in favor of nuclear addressing those concerns?
Yeah.
Well, they're emphasizing that the volume of waste generated by nuclear power is actually very small compared to other industries,
Hmm.
especially relative to the amount of energy it produces.
Right.
And they're pointing to the potential of advanced reactors to recycle spent fuel,
Okay.
which could further reduce the waste burden.
Yeah, that recycling aspect seems particularly promising. Like it seems like the technology is constantly evolving, and there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, there's a lot of exciting research happening in that area.
Yeah. What about the economic side of things? I know that's a major concern for a lot of people in New York.
Right, economic development is a huge factor.
Yeah.
And several commenters, especially those from upstate communities, are highlighting the need for good paying jobs
Right.
and the role that the nuclear industry could play
Mm.
in creating those. They're pointing to the success of existing nuclear plants in New York, like 9 Mile Point,
Okay.
which have been major economic engines for their regions.
That's interesting. I remember reading about the closure of the Indian Point nuclear plant downstate and how that actually led to an increase in fossil fuel use and higher electricity prices.
Yeah, and several of the reports we're looking at cite that as a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
They argue that keeping existing nuclear plants online and building new ones is essential for both economic and environmental reasons.
So it seems like there are like strong arguments on both sides of this debate.
Absolutely.
I'm curious to hear more about the specific types of reactors that people are talking about. Are there any like front runners in this blueprint for nuclear?
So one type of reactor that's generating a lot of buzz
Hmm.
is the small modular reactor, or SMR.
Oh yeah, we talked about those earlier, the ones that are like building blocks, right? They can
Yeah.
be manufactured off-site and assembled on location,
Mm.
which could potentially like streamline the construction process
Well,
and
yeah.
make things more efficient.
Exactly. And they offer a lot of flexibility in terms of siting and scalability.
Sure. Good.
You can start with a smaller unit and add more as demand grows.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm starting to understand why there's so much excitement around SMRs.
Yeah, and we also discussed how some advanced reactors can actually adjust their output
Right.
to match the ups and downs of electricity demand.
Right, like load following.
Exactly. Is that something that's being considered in this blueprint for nuclear?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That ability to load follow, as it's called, is seen as a major advantage, especially as we integrate more intermittent renewables like
Yeah.
like solar and wind into the grid.
Right.
Having nuclear power that can ramp up and down as needed
Yeah.
helps smooth out those fluctuations in supply and demand, which makes the grid more stable and reliable.
It's like having a backup generator for the entire state.
Exactly.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty essential feature for a grid that relies heavily on renewable energy.
It is.
Is there anything else in the blueprint that's catching people's attention?
So there's also a lot of discussion about using nuclear power for more than just generating electricity.
Right. We touched on that before, but it's worth exploring a bit further. Like, what are some of the possibilities beyond just keeping the lights on?
Well, there's a growing interest in using nuclear power to produce hydrogen,
Hmm.
which is seen as a clean fuel for transportation and industry.
So we'd essentially be using nuclear energy to create the fuel for like a hydrogen-based economy.
Yeah, exactly. And some advanced reactor designs, particularly high temperature gas reactors,
Sure. Yeah.
can provide the high quality heat that's needed for industrial processes like steel making, water desalination, and even the production of synthetic fuels.
It's amazing to think about all the potential application. It's not just about shifting to clean electricity. It's about creating a whole new like clean energy ecosystem.
That's exactly what many of these commenters are envisioning, a clean energy future that goes beyond just, keeping our lights on
Right.
and touches nearly every aspect of our lives. They see nuclear as a foundational element for a truly sustainable future.
It's an exciting vision, but also a daunting one. It seems like it would require like a massive investment and a tremendous amount of coordination. Like what are people saying about how to actually make all of this happen?
Yeah, that's where things get interesting and also a bit challenging. A lot of folks are expressing concern that New York's approach to nuclear energy is too piecemeal.
Okay.
They're worried that we're not thinking big enough, and that we need a more comprehensive plan that encompasses everything from, research and development
Right.
to siting and permitting to workforce development and public engagement.
It sounds like a pretty tall order. Are there any examples of other states that are taking a more comprehensive approach?
Yeah, there are
Right.
states like Wyoming, Texas, and even California are making significant investments in advanced nuclear projects.
Interesting.
They're taking a more proactive strategic approach, and it seems to be paying off.
So there's this sense of competition almost like
Right.
like if New York doesn't act decisively, it risks falling behind in the clean energy race.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of urgency in many of the comments.
Yeah.
People are recognizing that the transition to clean energy is happening now, and they want New York to be a leader, not a
Yeah.
follower.
Right.
But it's not just about competition. There's also a lot of talk about the need for collaboration.
Right, because we're all connected when it comes to energy.
We are.
Yeah. So what are some of the specific areas where people are calling for more collaboration?
Well, there's a lot of interest in developing regional approaches to siting and permitting.
Okay.
The idea is that instead of each state going it alone,
Right.
we could work together to find the best locations for these reactors,
Okay.
and that could help streamline the process and potentially reduce the not in my backyard sentiment
Right.
that often comes up with large infrastructure projects.
Yeah, because if people feel like they're being left out of the decision-making process, they're more likely to be resistant, especially with something as complex as nuclear power.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um so what are some of the other ways that people are suggesting we build public trust and support?
So many people are emphasizing the need for robust public engagement and education.
Oh,
And they argue that we need to address people's fears and concerns head on
right.
through clear communication, open dialogue, and opportunities for communities to be actively involved in the decision-making process.
So it's not just about informing people, it's about giving them a voice and a seat at the table.
Exactly. Transparency and trust are essential if we want to build lasting public support for advanced nuclear energy.
That makes a lot of sense, it sounds like. Like we're talking about a fundamental shift in how we approach energy policy, moving away from top-down decision making
Yeah.
towards a more collaborative, community-driven process.
That's a great observation, and that shift extends to the technical side of things as well.
Cool.
Many people are calling for more investment in research and development,
Okay.
and they see a role for partnerships between universities, national labs, and private companies
Right.
to accelerate innovation and bring down costs.
So it's about more than just building reactors. It's about pushing the boundaries of the technology itself,
Okay.
and fostering a vibrant ecosystem of innovation.
You got it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of excitement about the potential of advanced nuclear to drive technological breakthroughs in areas like material science,
Yeah.
computing, and even medicine. But we also need to be realistic.
Right.
There are a lot of challenges ahead, and it's not going to be easy.
It's not.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the costs, the complexity of the technology, and the need to build public trust. So So what are some of the next steps for New York? How do we translate all of this talk and these ideas into concrete action?
So the blueprint for nuclear is still in development,
Okay.
but it looks like the next step is to create a more detailed master plan
Okay.
that will lay out a clearer roadmap for achieving the state's energy goals.
So the blueprint is like a first draft, and the master plan is where we start to fill in the details and figure out how to make it all work.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
And based on what people are saying in these comments, it seems like there are a few key areas that the master plan will need to address. First and foremost, it needs to provide a clear assessment of how much advanced nuclear capacity New York actually needs Right. to meet its clean energy goals.
So we need to know how many reactors we're talking about.
Exactly.
What types of reactors are best suited for New York, and
Okay.
where those reactors could potentially be located.
Exactly. So
Wow.
it's about moving beyond the theoretical potential
Right.
of advanced nuclear and starting to develop concrete plans and strategies for implementation.
Right. And many people are stressing that the master plan needs to include a robust economic analysis.
Absolutely.
What are the costs and benefits of different nuclear pathways?
Right.
What are the impacts on jobs, tax revenue, and overall economic growth? Like we need to make sure that this is a win-win for both the environment and the economy.
You're absolutely right. And that holistic approach
Yeah.
needs to include a clear strategy for public engagement. How will New York ensure that communities are informed and involved in the decision-making process?
Right.
How will they address concerns about safety, waste, and siting?
Right.
These are all crucial questions, and they go to the heart of why nuclear power has been such a controversial topic in the past.
It's about building trust and making sure that everyone feels like they have a voice in shaping their energy future.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
and finally, the master plan needs to address the issue of workforce development.
Okay.
How will New York train the next generation of nuclear engineers, technicians, and operators?
Right.
How will we ensure that New Yorkers have the skills and training they need to fill the good paying jobs that this industry could create?
Right.
It's about investing in people and making sure that everyone benefits from the transition to clean energy.
It sounds like we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but also a lot of potential.
We do.
Yeah. What are your thoughts as we kind of wrap up this part of the deep dive?
I think this deep dive into the blueprint for nuclear and the public comments surrounding it has been incredibly insightful.
Yeah.
It's clear that there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm for exploring the role of advanced nuclear energy in New York's future.
Yeah.
But there are also legitimate concerns and questions that
Right.
need to be addressed.
And it's a complex issue with no easy answers.
It is.
But it's one that we need to grapple with if we're serious about tackling the climate crisis and creating a more sustainable energy future for all New Yorkers.
I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on like this incredible journey exploring the potential of advanced nuclear energy in New York.
We've covered a lot of ground. The technical details, the economic considerations. We even dove into public opinion on this blueprint for nuclear.
Right.
But now I think it's time to kind of zoom out and consider the bigger picture.
Okay. Yeah, I'm ready for those big picture insights. What does it all mean? Where do we go from here? Like, what are the key takeaways that you think our listeners should walk away with?
Yeah, I think going through all of these reports and comments, I'm struck by the fact that we're at a crossroads in the energy world.
Okay.
The need to decarbonize is urgent,
Yeah.
yet existing technologies, they only get us so far.
It's like we need a major breakthrough, but we also can't afford to wait like decades for it to happen.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what makes advanced nuclear so interesting. It's a technology that's been around for a while, but it's also constantly pushing the boundaries of of what's possible.
It's almost like this familiar yet futuristic source of energy. It has a history, but it also feels very, very cutting edge.
That's a great way to put
Yeah.
it, and I think that's part of what makes this whole conversation so compelling. It's not just about megawatts and technical specs.
Yeah.
It's about a fundamental shift in how we think about energy and its role in society.
I can definitely feel that shift happening. There's a lot of momentum building around clean energy, and nuclear seems to be finding its place in that
Yeah.
conversation. It feels like we're on the cusp of something really big.
We might be, but as with any major technological transition, there will be bumps in the road,
Right.
tough choices.
And we'll need to carefully consider all the potential trade-off.
Right. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about how we integrate it into our existing energy systems, how we manage the risks and how we ensure that everyone benefits from the transition to a cleaner energy future.
You nailed it, and that's why these public comments are so valuable.
Mm.
They offer a glimpse into the diverse perspectives and concerns that we need to keep in mind as we move forward.
And speaking of those comments, one theme that really resonated with me was this idea of a just transition.
Right.
It's not enough to just switch to clean energy.
Right.
We need to do it in a way that's fair and equitable for everyone.
Couldn't agree more. A just transition is crucial, and I think advanced nuclear has a lot to offer on that front.
Oh.
Um, we've seen in the reports that the nuclear industry has a history of providing good-paying union jobs, the kind that can support families and revitalize communities.
There was also a lot of discussion about the need for a long-term comprehensive plan for nuclear energy in New York.
Yeah.
People seem to want more than just a blueprint.
Right.
They want like a clear roadmap for how to get from point A to point B.
And that was a recurring theme in the comments.
Yeah.
Many people are concerned that New York's approach to nuclear is too fragmented and reactive.
Okay.
They're calling for a more strategic, proactive approach, a vision that looks decades ahead and lays out a clear pathway for advanced nuclear to play a major role in the state's energy mix.
So we need a blueprint, but we also need like a detailed instruction manual for how to turn that blueprint into reality. It's about thinking through all the steps involved from research and development to siting and permitting to workforce training and public engagement.
Exactly, and those steps need to happen in a coordinated way.
Right.
Many people are calling for what they call a whole of government approach.
Okay.
Recognizing that this is a complex challenge that will require collaboration across multiple agencies and levels of government.
And it's not just a state level issue either. There was a lot of talk about the need for collaboration with neighboring states, especially when it comes to things like siting and transmission.
That's right. Regional partnerships are essential.
Yeah.
The grid doesn't stop at state borders.
Right.
And it makes sense to work together to find the best locations for these reactors and to share the costs and benefits of clean energy development.
Yeah, it's like we're all in this together trying to create a cleaner, more sustainable energy future for the entire region. It's bigger than any one state or any one technology.
Exactly, and that brings us to another important point that came up in the comments, and that's the need to embrace innovation.
Okay.
It's not just about building more of the same old reactors.
Right.
It's about pushing the boundaries of what's possible and investing in new technologies and approaches.
We talked about all the exciting things nuclear energy could potentially do, beyond just generating electricity, producing hydrogen, providing process heat for industry, even recycling spent fuel. It feels like we're just scratching the surface of what this technology is capable of.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling when you think about it.
Yeah, it is.
But it's also important to be realistic.
Right.
There are risks and challenges associated with any new technology, and nuclear is no exception.
Right. We can't
Yeah.
just focus on the potential benefits and ignore the the potential
We
downsides.
can't. We've got to be honest about that. And we talked about safety concerns,
Right.
which are understandable given the history of nuclear power.
Right.
Um, while advanced reactors incorporate many new safety features, we can't forget that accidents can happen, and we need to be prepared to deal with them.
And we have to find solutions for managing nuclear waste, you know, safely and responsibly.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
an issue we can't just sweep under the rug.
You're absolutely right, and then there's the issue of cost.
Right.
Nuclear power is a significant investment,
Yeah.
and we need to carefully consider the economic trade-offs involved.
So there are risks, there are costs, but there's also this tremendous potential upside. It's about weighing all of those factors and
Yeah.
making informed decisions based on the best available evidence.
That's the key. We need to move beyond, the hype and the fear mongering, and engage in honest, open conversations about the opportunities and challenges associated with advanced nuclear energy.
And that's what we've tried to do in this deep dive to equip our listener with the knowledge they need to understand this complex issue and form their own opinions.
It's been a journey. It has, and I hope our listener feels better equipped to engage in this important conversation about New York's energy future.
So as we wrap up this episode, I wanna leave our listener with one final question to ponder. Could advanced nuclear power be the key to not only achieving New York's climate goals, but also creating a more resilient, equitable, and prosperous energy future for all New Yorkers?
It's a question worth exploring
And
further.
it's a question we all need to be thinking about and discussing. The future of energy is in our hands,
Yeah.
and the choices we make today will have a profound impact on the world we create tomorrow.
Absolutely.
That's it for this deep dive, everyone. We hope you enjoyed exploring this fascinating and crucial topic with us.
Until next
Until
time.
next time.